If Cyberpunk 2077 was the clustered mess of the gaming industry in 2020, then certainly Days Gone was one of 2019's biggest messes. The game was divisive and struck a point of interest in what was thought to be PlayStation's almost perfect score of exclusives that had momentously lined themselves up since 2014. Instead, Days Gone's critical reception was mediocre, and when contrasted to the PlayStation exclusives that had just released in the year prior, with games like God of War 2018 and Marvel Spider-Man both being Game of the Year contenders with absolutely superb critic scores. But there's evidently a divide between the critics and what they thought of the game and the actual fans who played it as well. This game can be credited as to once again sparking the long-running debate of critics versus players. In my opinion, I believe Days Gone is overlooked amongst the gallery of PlayStation exclusives and one that deserves more praise, points in which I will briefly discuss throughout this video. I think it's necessary to mention that I went into Days Gone with the mindset that the game was going to be painstakingly mediocre. Sure, I'd heard that the game was now out of nowhere getting all of this love and attention, and that players who weren't able to finish the game because of launch day problems should come back and experience it because it's a fixed and polished game. Despite that, I went in believing I was going to see plenty of problems, not just with bugs, but the story, the gameplay, and how the open world would be implemented to complement, or in this case, take away from the game's experience. And well, I was pleasantly surprised when I first jumped in. The game's opening was interesting, and I enjoyed the indirect characteristics that were offered right from the get-go, as the game introduces you to two central characters within the game's overarching narrative, of course being our protagonist Deacon and his best friend Abuza. Their motives were also locked in and introduced to us shortly after the opening sequence, and this combining with the thrilling first section of the game, which is a motorbike chase sequence, was to the game's benefit a great way to get me hooked into the game. Then there was the actual open world. It was beautiful. I often saw myself just walking around camps or driving across the beautifully empty wastelands of Oregon, really trying to take in the environment that was so meticulously crafted by the developers at Bend Studio. It was gigantic as well, and there was definitely enough variety within the open world aspects to keep me hooked in and wanting to play more and more. However, I could see a few complaints that I'd seen in critic reviews being minor problems for me in the game's first 6 to 8 hours, but certainly when I passed that milestone, I really got into the game like I hadn't done since Red Dead Redemption 2 or The Last of Us Part 2. The world really encapsulated Deacon and gave me the same sense of dread and absolute loneliness that Red Dead Redemption 2 was able to offer to me in abundance. The world's dreadful sensations really flashed through every aspect within it, and the gameplay, which was brutal and not forgiving on higher difficulties, really drove home the situation at hand. The gameplay was fun for me. I loved fighting the zombies, especially when later on in the game, around the 20-hour mark, the hordes are introduced and are arguably the greatest aspect of the game's gameplay component and really differentiates the game from the many other zombie shooters currently out there. The gunplay was satisfying, but definitely not anything innovative, and the hand-to-hand combat was fun yet extremely simple, and there's definitely a few tweaks within the hand-to-hand combat that I would have liked to see to make it feel more varied. The story, which I won't spoil here at all, was incredibly intriguing from the get-go for me, and Deacon's mission to find his long-lost wife was a long, tragic, and treacherous journey through the wastelands of Oregon, but they just added to how great the game was in turn. The story is definitely long, and there could be a lot of things that could be improved or entirely removed from the game as to improve the overall pacing of the narrative, which at certain core points could feel dragged on, and I can see how some players would drop off when getting to those certain moments within the narrative. But if you push through these moments, which are few and far between the great writing, there's truly an intriguing and revealing story to be told here, with few but extremely well developed characters with interesting dialogues and interactions with the world that envelopes them. But easily one of my favorite aspects of the gameplay components within the game is the motorbike in its entirety. The motorbike should be treated the same way as you would treat your horse in Red Dead Redemption 2. It's vulnerable, can be broken quite easily, and you've got to refuel it between almost every mission. It might sound tedious, but the moments that are created when you're searching for fuel in the night with zombies all around it give some of the most intense and fun experiences within the game that truly enhances the gameplay and combat. You're always scavenging for scraps from abandoned cars, zombies, and other enemies to repair your bike on the road swiftly, while you also search for fuel cans and gas stations to make sure that you're never stranded in the middle of nowhere and where zombies can easily get to you. Overall though, I can definitely say that the gameplay, open world, and story of Days Gone certainly impressed me, and the game left an incredible first impression, and I was intrigued enough as to finish the game in only a week. To discuss my many thoughts further and in a more elaborative detail, I'll definitely create a large analysis of the game's deeper aspects and elaborate upon the aspects that I enjoy and the ones that I dislike. For now, let's delve into how these aspects led me to believing that the game is overlooked in the gargantuan portfolio that is the plethora of PlayStation exclusives. All the aspects that I mentioned in the previous section are definitely the reasons as to why I believe believe the game is as overlooked as it is. I believe that many of the problems that overshadowed the game at launch were looked at as the face value of what the game truly was, when in reality there was a much deeper, complex and fun game and experience that was to be had underneath all the bugs and performance issues that plagued the game. Sure, I understand that games shouldn't be launched in such a horrendous state, and any developer that does so isn't properly thinking about the players that are going to be excited to play the game on day one. But as we've seen in the case of Cyberpunk 2077, underneath all the various launch problems, a wonderful game is to be found, and the initial criticism of Days Gone resonated with me, as I really did enjoy Cyberpunk 2077 in its launch week, unlike most people. However, in the case of Days Gone, I understand the problems with the pacing and whatnot, and I can understand that from a design perspective, the game's gameplay isn't in most aspects anything innovative or something that is trying to push the boundaries of open world games. But it's not like every other PlayStation exclusive or open world game is pushing these boundaries with every entry either. Ben's studio had a vision, and I think they've successfully been able to relay that vision while sticking true to their desires as a developer. The pacing of the story could be hard at times. When overcoming such issues, the story progresses quite rapidly and truly does, to the game's benefit, hook you in for the experience. The gameplay is simplistic, but the open world that you've got to explore, the arsenal in which you can use to defeat various enemies, and the strategies needed to take down various hordes within the game truly adds this layer of depth that not many other open world games can achieve. It's fun. It may be simple in some aspects, but it certainly makes up for that by being complex in others. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with the game, and for me, it stands among the rest of the PlayStation exclusives that Sony has pushed out in the last decade. It deserves the same respect and praise that many of Sony's golden trophies get all the time. If you give it a go and decide to stick with it, I assure you, you'll definitely have one hell of a game that you won't forget. Hey everyone, today's video was a bit shorter, less formal, and overall less edited than my other videos. As for why, that's probably due to the school exams that I have coming up, but as for what's next, I'll be going back to the long form retrospective content that I was doing before with the Max Payne series, but more specifically on the Middle-earth Shadow games created by Warner Brothers. However, due to many school exams coming up, plans may change, but that's what I plan to release in the next couple of weeks. As mentioned in this video, I want to do a really in-depth and constructive analysis of Days Gone and all the aspects that I loved and hated in a huge around 1 hour video. Of course, that's going to take time, and I don't expect that to be done in the next couple of months, but I definitely do plan on working on that in the meantime. The next video is projected to hit in about a week, so watch out for that. Hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you all have a fantastic and great week. Peace.